Dr. RandallBell, and I am joined by my wonderful co-host, TanyaBrown. How are you, Tanya?
Fabulous. This is going to be a great episode.
You know, it is. We have had like the world's best luck with fantastic guests.
We have.
Our podcast is new, but it's exploding. Mm-hmm. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
It's wonderful. We have with thousands of downloads. Mm-hmm. We've got thousands of hits, well, millions on the social media. Mm-hmm. And we've got listeners now from New Zealand to Europe.
Isn't that amazing?
It's because I think we're hitting what really is affecting people today in terms of resolving unresolved trauma.
Absolutely.
With these although long, we really dig into the details.
And I think you and I, just chiming in, quickly, where you and I have been in these interviews where it's like, 12, 13-hour interviews, and then they only take 2 minutes. So this podcast is really a great opportunity for our guests to really share their entire story without no edits.
Yeah.
We're not your major networks. Like, we want your story, and people need to hear your story.
Yeah. It's crazy. Just last night, a buddy of mine emailed me. He's the guitarist for Kenny Loggins. And he invited me to his concert, and they filmed it with an interview thing. And he sent me the clip from the concert I attended. I was there. It was 4.5 hours. I love Kenny Loggins, but that is a really long concert. I get the clip, and the excerpt from what I was there to see filmed was literally maybe 20 seconds.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
That's why he goes. So here's a couple updates for our listeners to know. We still are putting out the big episodes on Spotify, Apple, all the platforms for podcasts. We're also chopping them up into bite-sized pieces for TikTok. So if people don't have 5.5 hours, go to TikTok and listen there. You can pick up the gist of the story, all the key points in very short amounts of time.
Exactly.
So it's a nice new feature I just wanted to kind of share with you.
And I actually like that because when you're listening to a snippet, you will kind of grab hold of something that made sense that you really needed to hear that day.
Yeah.
So instead of, we don't have 5 hours to designate, listening to a podcast.
Some people do. Lots of people are.
I don't.
Well,
I
but
don't.
You're sitting here
I
for
went their life.
Okay. Well, you're sitting there for hours listening, and others people do too. But or some people do both.
These are great stories, and if there's one message, one quote, one story that that you like hold on to, cherish that, and keep listening to it, because we all need to be lifted up right now.
Yeah, reminded. So yeah, for sure. So let's jump into it. We have a wonderful guest, Ken Druck. And Ken, I've heard your name. Welcome to Post-Traumatic Thriving.
Good to be with you.
Yeah. So I'm going to just throw you a softball and say, Ken, tell us about yourself. Where were you born? Tell us about Ken and where you grew up and who you are.
Well, that's such an interesting question to ask somebody to look at the whole frame of, my God, when did this start? Where did I start? When did I start waking up? What was I aware of at an early age? And I'll take you back to being about 2 years old and somehow reading the tension in the room. What was the tension? Mm-hmm. What was going on? Why were my parents and my relatives, what was happening in the room that really called my attention? Well, being a post-Holocaust kid in a family that had been obliterated, many of them, in the Holocaust, being named for my grandfather's brother, my uncle Kasil, who was a prominent attorney, matter of fact, not far from where it's all happening in Ukraine, who was one of the first people Hitler killed because he spoke out against Hitler and said, this guy is crazy and he's going to kill all of us. He was one of the first people killed. I was named for him, as is a tradition in my faith. And so in that room as a 2-year-old, there were a bunch of people who were trying to feel where they fit in. Where do we fit in? We came over, many of the older grandparents came over on boats, ended up in Ellis Island, ended up settling in New York on the East Coast, and we're trying to find a place. and a sense of themselves. Where do we fit in? Is it dangerous here too? Or is this a safe place? What do we have to do to fit in? And they were scrambling with tension and confusion and competition to try to figure all that out. So I was the little kid in the room who was trying to mediate, even at age 2, not the class clown, but trying to listen to people and talk to people and understand them. And so I was that sensitive little kid who was kind of watching the room. And that's where I started watching the room. And I've been doing it ever since.
Where were you? Where did you grow up?
This is in New York.
In New York.
Yeah,
that's
right
what I
outside
thought.
Of New York City.
Okay, so you grew up in New York City, and at 2 years old, it sounds like one of your earliest memories is of this tension going off in the room.
Yeah.
And how, as a 2-year-old, do you remember how you tried to make sense of that?
I tried to make sense of it by speaking directly to the people that were feeling the greatest tension, by engaging in conversations with my aunts and uncles, some of whom became dear, intimate confidants throughout my entire adult life.
Wow.
But hearing their story, asking, being curious, what happened, learning from them, learning how they felt about it today, getting a sense, and also learning to reassure. You know, when a person's lost or doesn't know how they're fitting in, what do you say or do to give them a sense of reassurance that they're such a special person, that you're learning so much from them, that you're curious about their story? So I think I became that little interactive guy who people wanted to talk to, my relatives wanted to talk to. And it also became the way that I started learning. I was not one of these kids who went into school, preschool, and learned and memorized books. I learned from talking to people.
Wow.
At 2 years old.
At 2 or 3
You're
or 4.
an empath.
Now, let me tell you something. I'm going to fast forward just 1 second.
Okay.
Because I have
2-year-old
grandkids, and I'm watching them, and they're awake, and they're curious, and they're alive. And it's giving me a sense of validation that, yes, I might have been 2, but at 2, kids are they're asking infinite questions. Their curiosity, their desire to feel connected, to get good attention. So I'm watching that with my grandkids now.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's my fast forward, but I'll go back.
Maybe, you know what? It's in their DNA because you pass that on to them.
Yeah,
Very cool.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Well, we get into some great conversations.
At 2?
At 2 and a
I think
half
I was
years
still
old.
sucking my thumb at 2. No, I don't know.
No, and they even named me too.
Wow.
Poppy.
So you're aware
awesome.
of this characteristic in your personality, and this will make more sense as your story goes along. But and when you mention Auschwitz, I'll just quickly say, as you know, Ken, we've actually worked on a lot of the same disasters. Yes. That's how we got to know Tanya. Yes. We both worked on the O.J. Simpson case. We worked on a whole bunch of cases we'll talk about throughout the day. But this is the first time we met. I'm working in one area, you're working in another, but it's interesting in comparing notes, how much similarity. But here's my point. With Auschwitz, this sounds so weird to say, but it's just true. I was working on Chernobyl, and Auschwitz isn't very far away. It's in Poland, just across the border. And I told my assistant, I said, book me. I want to go see Auschwitz. I've read about it. It was right by where I was going anyway. And I thought I'd just swing by and check it out. Well, I got there and I worked on, according to the BBC, I've worked on more disaster sites than anybody. I don't know, maybe you've worked on more than me. It's not a competition, but here's my point. Auschwitz, when I'm asked which are the worst cases in the world, as tough as these cases we're talking about, Auschwitz just broke my heart. That's an episode of itself. We'll talk about another time. The other one is Sandy Hook. And you and I both worked on Sandy Hook.
Oh, I just got chills.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that too.
And we'll throw in a conversation about what it was like to be in the pit 9/11 as they cleaned it out, to be where I was every day with the dads of the firefighters.
Yeah. Yeah. We will get there, and why you got there,
Yeah.
and how you got there.
And we can't forget these moments of history.
So getting back to your childhood, what happy memories do you have of your, I mean, it sounds a little onerous to be a little kid.
Here's what balanced it out.
Yeah.
Here's what balanced it out. My mother, who played the 1934 World's Fair, played the clarinet, was a lover of music. I grew up with a background of Rimsky-Korsakov, of Chopin's Nocturnes, of some of the most beautiful music that has endured through centuries and has cracked people's hearts open for centuries. I got to listen to my mother playing it on the piano, playing Broadway shows on the weekends.
Wow.
She would take out her vinyl, we'd be listening to, Porgy and Bess, and all the culture, all the understanding of the people issues that are embedded in the greatest, because, when you listen to classical music, most of that music was written in a moment of traumatic loss.
Yeah.
Whether it was Beethoven losing his capacity to hear, some of the greatest, most moving music was written at a time of loss.
Wow.
And so many of the arts, the lily pond, we look at the lily pond. Why was the lily pond so compelling? Because his daughter had died and he had created a bridge over the lily pond that would bridge it was a bridge from the world of the living to the world of those who had passed. Wow. And that would be a way to stay connected. So anyhow,
that's profound.
That's the way I grew up, in the middle of that music. The other thing was I got a body that was the body of an athlete. So I could run fast. I could do all these athletic things. I had an outlet for the expression of my energy, unlimited energy. And I loved to play and run. And I engaged in sports, and that was a huge part of my life.
All growing up in New York.
All growing up in New York.
Were you in the city or?
Right outside of the city.
Okay.
Place called Rockville Center.
Okay.
And that was also, I know I'm fast forwarding, I'm not supposed to, but my fast forward is that's where I set up offices after 9/11 on Merrick Road in Rockville Center.
Gotcha.
Where you grew up.
I'll tell you the story of what happened there later.
Where you grew up.
Where I grew up. I was asked by the mayor of New York to come back home.
So you kind of like pulled my heart string right now, because when I was a college student at Orange Coast College, I used to take notes, not during class, but I would sit in the library and I would have Tchaikovsky in my ear. We didn't have earbuds. I had like a Discman, back in the day, or like a Walkman. But Tchaikovsky, and still today, when I hear Tchaikovsky, it's like I don't know the ballads. I don't, but when I hear it, then I know. It brings me back.
Are you a musician?
I am.
What do you play?
I play the drums. I was a rock drummer.
Okay.
Played in and around New York, and a lot of my buddies are still
classic
playing.
Rock, or what kind of?
Yeah, I mean hard rock. My buddies at Blue Oyster Cult.
Oh wow!
Guys who play with Springsteen.
Nice.
Roy, the pianist. But these are guys that I played with back in the day.
Okay.
I was not good enough to continue playing. And
even
I was
though your
smart
mom
enough to know that. But my buddies kept playing, and I still have drums, and I loved playing.
What brand of drums did you play?
Yeah.
Do you remember? Oh,
I had Ludwig. I mean, I had the cymbals, the Zildjian cymbals. I had a full set, and because I've tied together so much of my past and my future. When I think about the drums, after the tragedy I'm going to share with you later, I got rid of my drums. And it was 8 years later after that my other daughter showed up with a set of drums for me again.
Wow.
And I've been playing them since.
So it's small world. I grew up 2 blocks away from Leo Fender.
Oh my
and
God.
I wrote a book with Mrs. Leo Fender, and the title is, what do you know? The title is Leo Fender. But my dad worked there. And when Leo bought out Roger drums and Rode piano, that was all the kind of stuff. In fact, one night, my dad was home. We would play this game where he'd try and get out of him the rock stars he had met that day. And he said, I spent the day with this really nice guy. He had really long hair, but he's a nice guy. That's how my dad talked. He says his name was Carl. And I said, as in Carl Palmer, as in Emerson, Lake and Palmer? He goes, yeah, I spent the whole day with him. I said, Dad, they're playing at the Anaheim Convention Center. Why didn't you kind of work something out here? He goes, we don't do that. We don't take autographs. We don't take pictures. Yeah. We're there to talk about lug nuts and stuff. But similar, but I didn't have the sophisticated musical taste you did. It was all about Led Zeppelin and David Bowie.
all good stuff.
All great
it's
stuff.
All rock
it's
and
all
roll.
good.
Yeah.
But that, how do we survive? How do we get from surviving to learning what feeds us, what feeds our soul? It was the music. It was being able to play sports. Mm-hmm. Because I also came in the package deal with severe learning disabilities, which we now call differences. Uh-huh. So I was struggling horribly after you get to that critical point, 5th, 6th grade, where you can no longer use compensatory skills, uh-huh. and you can no longer bribe and flirt with the teacher, and you start falling through the cracks. So I also went through, my story also includes the falling through the cracks and believing that, my God, am I stupid? Mm-hmm. Am I just not one of the smart kids? Mm. I may be a great athlete and I love music and I'm friendly and I have a lot of friends and I communicate on a deep level with other kids. But God, must I be stupid? Am I deficient here? Because the way kids are measured to be smart is your capacity to memorize.
Yeah.
And I had, language processing problems and I wasn't wired for that kind of stuff.
Did you have siblings through childhood?
I had a smart sister who was wired.
Aren't those annoying, those smart sisters?
I hate those 4.2, 4.8 sisters. I got one.
But then I had a brother who had it worse than me.
Oh, wow.
Learning differences worse than mine. So I had the complete package. But I had a mother who was a valedictorian and a father who had never even gone to college, but was a successful businessman.
Well, what kind of business did your dad have?
My dad started a business. He had no idea. My dad, by the way, was the kid who, after the 3rd inning at Yankee Stadium, of turning the styles because they didn't have automatic ticket things. Mm-hmm. My dad got into Yankee Stadium to watch Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig.
Wow.
So my dad,
I just got chills.
Yeah. So my dad was the kid who lived on the 5th floor walk-up in the Bronx, New York, who was living in utter poverty, whose parents had just come over from Ukraine and had no ability to take care of themselves. And my father, along with a couple of his brothers, were ambitious, and they said, we got to do something. And he started a little business making curtains and bedspreads, making curtains primarily. And he was in the curtain business. And he grew that over the course of my growing up. It became his devotion. It became his 20-hour a day devotion. And he grew that business and fed it.
Good for him.
Like your dad did with
Yeah. Well, our kitchen table is made out of cutaway Stratocaster wood.
Oh my God.
No kidding. And I still have it. My mom is 99 and we took the table off to put into a museum. So we have some interesting musical connections there, don't we?
We do. We know some people
at
Fender the same. There's a guy named Dell who wrote a book called The Cool Factor, who works at Fender.
Oh, really?
Worked at Fender. He was their communications director. But you and I, my God.
Oh, man,
this is cool.
Tanya and I know each other.
Thanks for bringing in
I know.
best friend.
This is like a class reunion without having gone to school together.
This is funny. It's like I've known you for over 20 years and who I never even knew like this.
Yeah, you've known us both for 20 years, but we just met. It's awesome. This is awesome.
But you know what? Isn't this amazing?
How fun.
How many of us have this happen to us in our lives that we meet? It's like, my God, you're my brother. Why has it taken so long for us to meet? because you are the brother that I didn't know I had.
Well, better late than never.
Here we are.
Let's have a party, man. Come on
You're
down
welcome.
to the beach.
Well, this is the party. You guys invited me here to share. What an honor,
Well, it's an honor to have you, and the party will continue.
Absolutely.
I have the feeling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So to kind of recap where we've gone so far. So you were born in New York.
Yeah.
Growing up in a Jewish family where the Holocaust, you felt the onerous of that at a very young age.
Yes.
That's something I want to gel on a little bit because there's something to that. But on the bright side, you're athletic, you got a lot of friends, and you've got this interest in music, classical music, and then as well as the rock music, playing the drums. And then you're also struggling 5th or 6th grade with some learning disabilities. So there's kind of a mix going on here.
There's a mix going on. But I'm blessed because I'm that one generation further with parents who feel the pain of their parents, of their lost relatives. And I have the luxury and the blessing of the world they have opened to me with all of these opportunities for self-discovery and for expression. And I don't have the heaviness. I sense it. It's in the air, but I don't have it in my cells the way they do. But I know enough about it. And as my mother starts finding her way in our community, she starts creating bridges between religions, between the Jew. She's part of the Association for Christians and Jews. She's working on human rights, on social justice issues. So her occupation in life becomes those things to kind of humanize all of us into seeing that we're part of the same family.
Nice.
That's the atmosphere in which I was raised in.
I love that.
Yeah, that's nice.
I had, when I was at Acacia Elementary School up in Fullerton, there was a girl in our class. Her name still is Lee. And she was Jewish. Well, I guess she still is. But her mom came in over the holiday season because most of the kids in the class were Christian and didn't know much about the Jewish tradition and faith. And her mom got up and talked about Hanukkah and the spin the top, the ladle, the dreidel. And I thought, man, I want to be a Jew. You get all these days at Christmas. We got one day at Christmas. I mean, it was the same kind of thing. It sounds like kind of like your mom building bridges and understanding. And from that day forward, I just thought Jewish was like the coolest thing. And it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I grew up with the full spectrum of, each of us comes from a tradition that has a full spectrum. There are the parts of that Jewish tradition and background that deal with loss, that deal with tragedy, that deal with joy and celebration, that deal with love and connection to family that I love, that I've celebrated, I've been a part of.
Yeah.
But there's another part of it. What about the people who go through a tragedy? They never process what they've gone through. And unprocessed grief, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, can become violence.
Yeah.
Look at the Middle East, look at any part of the world.
Yeah.
Unprocessed. Look at what's happened in all parts of the world in different times, even in recent years. Yeah. Unprocessed grief becomes indifference to the pain of other people. It becomes violence because there's the false promise of revenge that we're going to get satisfied if we're vengeful. So I got to see the full spectrum of a family and a community that had the highest and best expressions of what was Jewish, but also the insecure, the unprocessed, the arrogant at times, all the things that publicly Jews have been criticized or judged for. Those were so I got to see all that and decide, who am I in this spectrum? And I disidentified with some Jews. It's like, I'm not going to be anything like that.
Right.
I don't want to be anything like that, but I do want to be like that. I love that tradition. I can learn from that. I can grow from that. I like the way people treat each other in that tradition, that part of the tradition. So I became, as I imagine all of us embrace certain parts of our background, and other parts will go, that's not me.
It sounds to me, Ken, like as you're growing up, you're not. It wasn't like me. The things on my mind was going to the beach and playing my guitar. That was basically occupied about 99% of my brain.
Did you like girls? Because guys.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry.
You and I need to connect on that one too.
Yeah.
I like girls.
I still do.
Yeah.
I left that one off.
Yeah, don't forget that one.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous one. Men don't. We don't talk about that one publicly.
It's like
We're still in process.
It's like the rock star on the beach.
Still trying to figure them out too, but that's another whole episode.
Good luck.
Yeah. So, but you're a very thoughtful kid. It sounds like you're really thinking deep. Where frankly, at that age, I was pretty freaking shallow.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to agree.
No, I mean, no, I'm not agreeing, but
no, just kidding.
But as a 2-year-old, so God gave you a gift of being an empath and being compassionate and being curious. So many people, including me, maybe Randy, I don't know. I'm not going to, speak for you, but I know your average 2-year-old, 15-year-old, 20-year-old is not that curious. It's like we're not engaged. And so I think it is who you are, but I firmly believe it's a gift that was given to you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For you to kind of dissect.
Look,
and
people ask me what kind of a life I said. I am a blessed, cursed man. We'll get to the cursed part later.
I like that.
I have had a blessed life. But I'm a guy who walks with a limp in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And I think both are important to acknowledge the story. I imagine some people are listening to this podcast and they're saying, "Oh, all this good, happy stuff."
Yeah. Where's this going?
I'm both of those things. Okay. I am broken in parts and whole. I am both. And I think early on, I just want to say to people listening that if you have suffered or are suffering a loss or some kind of a challenge or change, whatever, that this is not about becoming one thing or the other. It's about embracing both the broken sides of ourselves and what we do about that and the wholeness that is us. That matter of fact, the wholeness that has more to do with our brokenness than we can even imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
The wholeness that grows out of brokenness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So getting back to your child, 6 or 7, you're struggling with some learning disabilities. And then tell us about high school and, I don't know if college was in your thing. Just talk about that phase of your life.
I thrived on sports. And yes, I did love girls. That's another podcast. and because I connected, some of my best friends were girls. And we have a rock and roll story there to bookmark. We'll put that in the parking lot of one of my best friends who became a writer for one of the biggest rock bands.
Okay.
Yeah, Blue Oyster Cult.
Nice.
Yeah, but she was my best friend. So it wasn't only a connection like, oh my God, it was, oh my God, what a sweet, loving, smart person.
Yeah.
What a good friend this would be to have.
Yeah.
But the learning disabilities were the dark side of my life. It's like wrestling with not fitting in, always having to compensate. And the way I compensated was sports. And I excelled in sports. I got scholarships. And I was the 5'11" white kid who could dunk the ball.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was a 6'3" kid that couldn't.
Who made all New England,
Wow.
played ball. But every time I came down wrong on that 3-foot vertical leap, it tore more of the ligaments in my left ankle. So my basketball career wound down early in college.
Gotcha. Yeah. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Hofstra University.
Okay.
Yeah. And then here I was, I couldn't play sports anymore. What do we do when something's been taken away from us like that? That's our primary form of expression. What do we all do? Or a person's been taken away. That was our partner in getting out and doing something, a sibling or whatever. What do we do? Well, I suddenly became curious. My appetite for learning suddenly I was in a school that didn't measure my intelligence on the basis of memorization. They were asking me questions, and they found out, God, this guy's been thinking for a while. He knows how
Since he was 2.
He knows how to critically think and critically address problems. So suddenly I was plugged into that world in psychology because I was interested in people issues. The jobs that I got that paid for my college, all the work that I did, I continued on that path. When I left New York in a little Volvo with my new wife in 1971, my God, that's now you know how old I am. So when I left, I went out looking for a graduate school, and we traveled across America, ended up in Colorado, got my master's and realized I can learn. I got my master's in counseling psychology, and then went out to California, continued to go west, came out to California and decided this is where we want to live. And I came out and got into a doctoral program and got my PhD in clinical psychology.
Nice.
Yeah. Most of which, by the way, if you think that makes me, for the second part of what we're going to do today, an expert, most of what I learned as a clinical psychologist, I had to unlearn.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Interesting.
Later.
I totally understand that.
Yeah. People ask me what I do. I say, I'm a recovering psychologist.
Yeah. I totally understand that. Absolutely. I relate.
But there's an important issue in terms of our ability to be with other people, to meet other people in a moment of truth, especially those we meet who are suffering the worst moment of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And
more importantly, I think meeting people where they are, you went through your practicum and dissertation and, you got your PhD and all of this. But I remember going through my practicum and I was like, okay, can we rush this? Because I know what's like waiting for you on the other side. And that's what I really had to learn, where it's like, Tanya, don't rush the process. Nobody rushed it for you. Right. So just kind of, and that's a really important message for our listeners. We really want to, fast forward everything. But what you just said, it's like, it's a skill to meet people where they are and not rush their journey.
You just nailed for me what's in the essence of healing and of growing and of learning and becoming the best version of ourselves, which is, I am a work in process. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to apologize or rush or pressure myself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep my hand on my heart and my foot off of my throat. Yeah. And I'm going to allow myself to go through this process without looking at my watch, mm-hmm. wondering, and being triggered that I in shame or in guilt or in some other kind of pressure that I should be progressing faster than I am.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's journey is different.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My doctoral advisor was a guy named Miguel. It's probably the smartest guy I ever met in my life. Get this, he went undergrad to MIT. Then he went to grad school at Stanford. Then he went to Yale for his theological degree. And then he went to Columbia for sociology. And my thing was in sociology. Mm-hmm. And he met me and he's like, I know what was going through his head now. It's like, just slow down, dude. Take a deep breath because you're not blowing through this, right? And you're not graduating until you start kind of getting this stuff.
That's a great title for a book, by the way. Slow down, dude.
I like that. It's true.
Let's write it together.
Yeah. Slow down, people.
Well, we'll get to your books later, but this is fascinating. So you leave New York and the New York City area. You move in your Volvo to Colorado with your new wife. You move then to California. You get your.
We have 2 kids in Colorado,
and your kids, 2 daughters, and their names are
Jenna, and Stephanie.
Jenna and Stephanie.
Yes.
Okay, and what were they like as little girls?
Jenna was like from another planet. Jenna arrived, at 2 years old. She was asking me, Daddy, why do we have to die? She was asking questions. She was watching the world. She was precocious, conversational, engaging in a way that not many people, I mean, we all talk about our kids and in exaggerated terms. But Jenna, for me, was a 1 in a billion. And then her sister came along. Of course, being at the time, being a psychologist, we spent the whole year prepping for the second child to come. And so we did everything, and we wrote the book, and we set up the room, and we painted, and we had her involved, and we brought her to the hospital when, it was time for Steffi to come home. And Jenna came over, and she said, she kissed her, and she looked at her, and she said, "Okay, this is it." We said, "Yeah, the baby's." And she said, "Okay, can we go home now?"
It's almost like
sweetheart, your sister's coming home to live with us. We forgot that part.
Yeah, you forgot that part. It's almost like Jenna was kind of born an old soul.
Jenna was born an old soul.
Oh,
she was
what's the year difference between the two?
2 years.
Okay. Oh, that's great. That's between. Yeah, that's like Nicole and Denise.
Yeah.
That's nice.
So Jenna was born, and then Steffi was born. They're both born in Colorado. Yeah.
Jenna and Steffi. And, you're a lucky guy, Ken.
Joy of my life, by the way.
Yeah.
I was thrown out of I said, "Hand out cigars? Are you friggin' kidding me? I'm going to help deliver my daughter." I was one of these guys who, and I'm not going to miss this. There's no more amazing thing a human being can do than to create another human being. I'm not going to miss this. And my wife is depending on me, and we've taken this class together.
Right.
I was a consultant to the Childbirth Education Association. I said, "You're not keeping me out of here." So I created a whole scene in the hospital to get through what I had assumed I was going to be let in. And I was part of and helped deliver both of my daughters.
Nice. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. So let me ask you, were laws different? Because now it's not, they were different back then.
Laws were
so you different. You couldn't be a partner being in the same room, the delivery room.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the world has changed radically, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Well, you're a lucky guy. I have 4 kids, and I only have 1 daughter. And so you're lucky to have 2.
Yeah.
I just saw my granddaughter driving down here. I stopped by. My son-in-law and my daughter just moved down here, and it brought back, having this granddaughter just brought back these memories of when my daughter was so little, and she's such a wonderful mom. And there's a whole different. My boys are great and everything, but they're dudes, but my daughter and my granddaughter, oh my gosh, it's just. There's a special place in dads and grandpas' hearts for that.
Yes. There's no
for
question
sure
about it.
You guys are, sorry.
No, go ahead.
You guys are kind of talking, because my daddy died, right?
Yeah.
In 2014. We're 4 girls. So my dad was married before my mom and had 3 children, 2 girls and 1 boy, Tracy. His first daughter actually died of Lou Gehrig's disease. So when you mentioned Lou Gehrig's, I was like, I got chills. But I just remember daddy coming in from the back of the house at Monarch. And anytime that he would come to the kitchen table and he'd see all the girls hanging out, he'd be like, "Okay, exit stage left."
Just keep going.
Just keep going. I'm not even, because so it's nice to hear 2 men who would, because maybe that's what daddy was feeling.
Oh no, let me tell you, your dad and I used to go down, I forget, some fish restaurant right down here.
Harbor Grill.
Yeah, that's it. And he liked, I think he liked just talking to a guy once in a while.
Yeah.
But his heart was with his girls, I'll tell you that. He felt the same way. So you're living at this point in San Diego, and are you practicing as a therapist then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I started doing something. There's a stream of oppositional defiant behavior or resistance or questioning or redoing that goes through my whole life. And in the mid 70s, performing as a psychologist, I would ask my clients started being leaders in business and government. And I started asking them, they said, "Hey, you got to keep this quiet." And they were so worried about the stigma. It was in the mid 70s that I said, "Would it be easier if we called this coaching?" So I started something called executive coaching. My buddy, Ken
Had you
Blanchard,
heard that term before?
Never. My buddy, Ken Blanchard, cranked it into his company. He said, "This is a great idea. We got to start doing this too." And coaching, I think there are other people starting to do this around. I don't think I'm the only pioneer here, but I started something called executive coaching and consulting that kind of depathologized the work that I was doing with these clients who, number one, wanted to run the bill for their company if they could, and number two, didn't want the stigma that they had all these rough edges that needed smoothing out. So I have continued to do executive coaching and consulting.
So as far as we know, you invented the term. As far as we know,
I was one of the first people to use executive coaching.
Yeah,
There's no question.
Yeah.
And develop, formats and templates for what that looked like and how that was different from therapy. And even though in some ways it's, a good executive coach is doing the same things.
Right.
A good therapist is doing as well.
Absolutely.
Or any confidant, any trusted confidant is doing the same thing, whether they're a friend, a sister, a brother, a relative, a priest, a rabbi. They're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They're listening. They're helping people identify what their options are and draw them out to hear what they believe. And then when asked about their own critical input and thinking, then they'll share. Personally,
I think coaching is, I'm an advocate for therapy. Like I go to therapy 2 times a month. Like I'm a total advocate for it. I'd go every day if I could. But coaching, I think it's very proactive. It's saying, okay, this is where I am. Because when you are coaching, you're processing, because I do coaching as well, right? So you're processing, but you're meeting them where you are, but you're giving them a tool, a resource, a path, like, okay, this is where you are now, but imagine where you can be. Yes. And it's giving them that, that goal, that journey, that path. Yeah. To me, I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think for people who are also grieving losses and have suffered traumas, it's like, I got to go see a shrink. Now, I've lost my mind. Why else would they be sending me to a psychologist or a psychiatrist? So a lot of people who are sensitive in that way, when you say this is grief coaching or this is coaching for people who've suffered a loss, the languaging of that is softer. And it's like, okay, I haven't lost my mind or my heart. I'm going through grief. I'm experiencing trauma. I need to learn how to live through this to the other side of it.
Exactly. We're finally talking about mental illness, right? So it's kind of like you just changed the vernacular, right? So just like mental illness, what's mental illness? What's mental health, right? So it's because it's still such a huge stigma. But with coaching and what you're talking about right now, it gives people a more comfortable platform to go, okay, you know what? This makes me feel more comfortable to reach out to you because you relate. But if I have to go to a therapist or a psychiatrist, it's like, oh, now I'm in the loony bin. That's what people, are thinking of this whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I told somebody last week, this guy is 17-year-old, brilliant. He's one of the most scouted young baseball players in America. And he's trying to make decisions about what he's going to do. And he's got all this pressure on him now. And I said to him, why don't you just pretend I'm the good uncle you didn't know you had? And let's talk from there.
I like that.
Man, I want to go to therapy when Ken can be my therapist.
Right?
My coach. That's really brilliant because it does. I think things have gotten better with the whole stigma thing about therapy. And I think younger people are getting smarter about all this and realizing that these old notions are obsolete. But still, there's a real genius to what you did there. I mean, I'm in awe. That's super cool. So let's get back to your family. You're in a practice. You're living in San Diego, and your girls are growing up. What are they doing at this time in their lives?
My oldest daughter Jenna is voted one of America's future leaders.
Wow.
She is admitted out of high school where she's been the class vice president, and whatnot.
Right.
And the chief soccer star and track star and all that. And she's been admitted into this program where she is going to be meeting some of the top leaders and executives in the country.
Neat.
And she is just soaring.
Yeah.
And she goes to college, and her younger sister, who inherited all of my learning differences and disabilities, falls straight through the cracks.
Mm.
And suddenly, it's almost like the child that one of your kids comes up to you and says, Dad, I know you did a great job here, and Jenna was perfect, and this no maintenance parenting, and, you did great, but I'm here to teach you unconditional love.
Yeah.
I'm here to teach you forgiveness. I'm here to teach you how to set healthy limits. I'm here to teach you that control is just an illusion when it comes to some parenting. And that's what happened. And so for a number of years, I was in the business of trying to save my daughter's life, and she was spinning out of control. And she began to pull it all back and reel it back all in. And this is 1995, 1996. And Jenna was thriving. She had become the first Jewish president of her national sorority.
Mm.
So she was, even though she didn't identify religiously, we're not a religious family, but she was setting precedents. She was creating programs. She was philanthropic. She was doing amazing. And she had infiltrated MTV. She said, I've got to get in there. The misogyny and the music has got to change. And she infiltrated MTV. She worked at the first MTV Beach House in Malibu. Remember the Malibu Beach House with all those VJs?
Yeah.
Well, she got, that first year was devoted to my daughter, because Jenna said, Dad, I know the world's bigger than Colorado, San Diego, and there's an amazing program. It's called Semester at Sea. And you go and you live on the ship for a semester, and you go through South America, Africa, Asia. You're going to go to India. You're going to go to Japan, and we'll be home May 15th.
Okay.
Jenna died on March 27th in India when the bus that she was on flipped over.
Oh, my goodness.
And she and 3 other beautiful young women died. So the last phone call was the I love you phone call. Daddy, I love you. When she called from South Africa, she had met Mandela. Dad, I can't believe it. 15 people live in a room the size of my room at home. She'd gone through the adventure of a lifetime. They'd overbooked a bus ride on the most dangerous road in the world, the Grand Trunk Road, where 1,600 people die every year. And the bus was 1 hour from the Taj Mahal. And the night before, she called to say, Dad, I can't believe it. I am going to see the world's most famous symbol of eternal love. I'm going to the Taj Mahal. And she never made it to the Taj Mahal. So my phone rang at 10 o'clock at night. And it's the phone call that stops time. And everybody who's listening, who's gone through something like this understands it. And Tanya, you understand it. And all of time stopped. All of time stopped in that moment. My heart stopped. My life as I knew it had ended. My daughter, the fact that my daughter's life had ended was an abomination of nature. My daughter was my soulmate. My oldest daughter was my soulmate in this life. That's just the way it works out sometimes. The person who you feel most deeply connected to in this life. And she had died. And the phone rang, and I fell to my knees. And I don't know that a part of me has ever gotten up off my knees. That part of me. But another part of me was looking to the heavens, literally within minutes, and speaking to my daughter, saying, what now? What now? And out of the ethers, and I can't tell you how or what, and I'm not here to tell you that I know the true nature of life and death. I don't. But out of the ethers, and not physically, but almost spiritually, I could hear her saying, when I said, what now? I heard her say, more nows.
More nows.
More nows. In other words, you're going to have to confront the moments that are to come. and face into them. And I can't tell you what's to come. Everybody wants to know what's to come. And it was this, can a person heal from pain of this magnitude? When a person's heart has been ripped out, and you're as a parent or whatever, is this just a curse? Like the rest of your life is cursed because you're going to be suffering in choiceless, unresolved pain for the rest of your life. And so you're screwed. It's over, which is what it feels like in the beginning. Mm-hmm. It's over. Mm-hmm. It's over. And part of it is your life as you knew it ends in that moment. Mm-hmm. But then you begin to notice that, my God, not all, it hasn't ended for all of me. There's still a part of me walking around, fighting to stay alive, searching for the next breath, searching for a way to manage pain that's unspeakable. Mm. And that's where the journey begins.
Wow. Well, as one dad to another, all I can say is I'm so sorry. I can't, this is every parent's absolute worst nightmare. Mm-hmm. You've experienced it in your family, Tanya. Mm-hmm. You've experienced Ken. I have not my family, but my brother's family, the loss of a child. And, you There's just thank God for every day where you don't live that nightmare, but unfortunately those nightmare moments come along. Mm-hmm.
There's nothing like it. It's, both of you have said you've gone through it. I haven't gone through it. I witnessed it, with my mom and my dad. I would never, because I don't have children. So I don't know what that's like, but I witnessed that pain. And losing Nicole was one thing that, you can grieve from that and move on from that. But when you see your parents, get that phone call, like, no, my parents were never the same. They were still the same, Dita and Opa, but their lives were never the same. Denise did say something to me one time, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she did say to me one time, she goes, and I never really understood it because, time heals and all that stuff. Those are like the worst things that you can ever say to anybody. But she did say this to me one time, and it made sense. She goes, it doesn't get easier. You just learn how to live life without that person. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
What I tell people often is people say, how are you? Does it ever get better? And I say, no, it never gets better. It gets different.
Yeah, I like that. It does. It gets different.
And this is when I said, that's where things begin. I couldn't emphasize it enough. What begins, because everybody who's listening, who's gone through this kind of a loss or any kind of a serious loss where you're just looking for the next breath. It's like you are, the equivalent would be in the ICU having tubes, except you're grieving. So there are no tubes. Mm-hmm. You're just fighting more sorrow than you ever imagined you could bear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're trying to breathe in between those tidal waves that roll through. So where it begins is an amazing story of miracles, of hard work, of faith at times, of humility, of understanding what this life truly is and what it asks of some of us. And we begin to look around the world at the suffering. There is more joy in any given moment of this life going on around us than we can imagine. Mm-hmm. People, babies being born, people falling in love, people drawing nourishment from the air. The idea that we breathe and we nourish ourselves with air and food, and we have this miraculous life to live, and an atmosphere that gives us life and supports life, and all the miracles. There's more joy and more miracles than we can imagine, but there's also more suffering and sorrow than we can possibly imagine. And our trip to the bottom of pain, for those of us who've taken it, affords us with a level of compassion that very few people in the world ever attain.
Mm-hmm.
We have the ability to understand the suffering of the world,
Mm-hmm.
what we do about it, starting with what we do about ourselves, our own healing. You know, I had a vivid moment somewhere in the first year where it was like Bill Murray on Groundhog Day. I'd get up and I'd see two paths, one to the right, one to the left. I'd look down this path and I would see it was the path of despair. And excuse the expression for those who are sensitive to language, I saw both my daughters pissing on my grave. Dad, you gave up completely. You stopped being my father. My earth daughter is speaking now. I have an earth daughter and an angel daughter. My earth daughter is saying, you gave up. You made your pain the center of the universe. Everything revolved around your pain. You stopped being my father.
Mm.
You didn't know what to do. You stopped there. You contracted with a heart broken closed. You contracted around your pain to prevent any further pain. Your heart broke closed. We should have just buried you with Jenna. Then I look down the other path and I see my two daughters saying, Daddy, we're so proud of you. We're so proud of you. You fought your way back into life. You continued to be our Father. You made a promise to make every day of the rest, whatever you have left, meaningful, purposeful, and to put life back into it, and to use what you had learned to make the world a better place and to make yourself a better person. We're so proud of you, Dad. We understand there were days you couldn't get out of bed. That's okay. Days you curled up in a ball under the table. That's understandable. But you fought your way back into life. You honored us in the way you went on. You survived the unsurvivable. And I look at that, I wake up like Bill Murray and it's Groundhog Day. What am I going to do? How am I going to live? And out of that, I started creating a template called the 6 honorings, the path of honor. And we'll talk about
We're
that.
going to get into that on our very next episode. I think this is a good time to kind of end this episode. I just want to say, Ken, it's an honor to have you here, really. And thanks for, it can't be fun. I get choked up just hearing your story.
I got my Kleenex.
Thanks for sharing it. That's not fun stuff to talk about.
No.
Thanks for being the kind of people that don't run away.
Mm.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Most of us don't tell our story because we're afraid that somebody's going to throw a cliche at us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us the glass is half full. Tell us, God has another angel. They're going to invoke something that they believe takes away our pain rather than just being with us through the story and just listening with their hearts. So that's the gift that you're giving right back to me.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. It's an honor to be in a safe place to share my truth.
Yeah. And I can't imagine the number of people that you're actually helping right now, because we have people literally around the world listening. We're building a community where we can talk about this stuff, and it's doing real good. We're already getting the feedback that, and I think your story, sharing your story, as difficult that is to relive, is really helping a lot of people, because that's problem number one. People bottle it up inside. They cause an internal war, and then they're triggered, and then they're off to prison or dead or some unpleasant place. So that's what we're all about. So we'll come right back. And this is kind of the dive stage. You took an unimaginable dive. We're going to move on to survive on post-traumatic thriving, where we learn to dive, survive, or thrive.
The choice is yours.
Thanks for supporting our podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on your favorite social media. For books, merchandise, or to donate, visit CoreIQ.com. Post-Traumatic Thriving is produced by CoreIQ, a nonprofit with a mission to teach the life skills we all need but are not taught in school. CoreIQ and the Post-Traumatic Thriving podcast are for informational purposes only and do not provide medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your licensed medical and mental health care providers.